Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Folks, we're going to kind of take where we got to yesterday and take it an incremental step further. And just to remind you of some of the key ideas, because I need to use that as a base plate, and also for the people who didn't see these ideas yesterday. What we spoke about yesterday is the architecture of intent. And we basically argued that if you look at how intent works, if this is the self, and that's the other, the world that encapsulates you, in any situation that you're in, you can fundamentally construct your intent on one of two variables. You can either engage somebody else on the basis of what you want from them, what you're getting, or you can engage the other on the basis of what you're giving. And these two variables work differently. If you get something, what you get moves from other to self. When you give something, what you give moves from self to other. So that's the fundamental architecture of intent. And we also said that there's this shift of intent from taking to giving is also consistent with the process of maturation. Because when you examine the process of maturation, you say, well, actually, it's an incremental move from a beginning called birth to an end called death, and we agreed that's the direction, because that would be kind of like wrong, disturbing. so now, I mean, what's interesting about these 2 points of birth and death is that they're actually, from an intent point of view, they're the only truly unconditional moments you face in your life. Because surely at birth, the infant has had nothing yet. So whatever the infant is going to get, the infant will still get. Whereas at death, you can't take anything with you. So you could say at death, you give everything unconditionally. But there's a logical challenge to that, and that is to say, when I die, I don't give anything, everything gets taken away from me. So if we assume that Jaffrey has, what was the amount they took from you yesterday? 500 pounds. It's an eye-watering amount of money. Somebody steals 500 pounds from Jaffrey, and Sandra gives somebody 500 pounds to save the life of an aging granny who's about to die of some dreaded disease, and they don't have the money for the medicine. It's really noble. I mean, it is really noble. I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, so I mean, the question is there a difference between what happened to Sandra and what happened to Jaffrey? Yes, there is. You were taken from and you gave. That distinction does not sit in the 500 pounds, which is what the point is. The difference between giving something and having it taken from you does not sit in the objective event. And it doesn't matter how dramatic that objective event is, it could be death itself. It sits in the intent of the person who's going through the experience. And if we view the loss of the 500 pounds like death, in other words, absolutely predictable, it's definitely going to happen, then clearly it's your experience of the loss of the 500 pounds, which is the successful experience, which suggests the process of maturation is concerned with the process of the maturation of intent to give unconditionally. This is all stuff we agreed yesterday. You may remember I asked you, I said, fire off the hip, what's the difference between immature and mature people? And there were kind of, you may recall there were broadly 2 classes of things that were raised. I mean, first of all, you said things like immature people are emotional and kind of irrational, and kind of volatile. Mature people are more measured, they're more reasonable, they're more rational. And that talks to this issue of the distinction between getting and giving, because the first thing that's true for the difference between immature people and mature people is when a mature person walks into a situation, what they give attention to would be, when an immature person walks into a situation, what they give attention to are their own expectations, what they want. Whereas a mature person walks into exactly the same situation, and what they'll give attention to is not their expectation, what they want to get, but how can I help? What's the contribution I can make? Which basically suggests that there's sort of a kindness to mature people. You know, there's like a generosity of spirit to mature people, and I'll give you an example of this. I mean, if you think about this issue of irrationality and kind of reactiveness, when you're talking about immature people, one of the things that would then be true for a person like that is that they really find it difficult to listening. Immature people don't listen well. And I'm sure you've had this experience. I mean, have you ever had a conversation where you're trying to explain something to somebody else and they're answering you back before you finish speaking? If you're married, you've had this experience. You're going to... Well, ask me. I've been married. I can tell you. This is not a gender comment, by the way. So let's assume, Sandra, you're trying to tell me something. And as you open your mouth, I finish your sentence for you. So you try again and I answer you back. You try a third time and it's really miserable. Clearly, from your point of view, there are two agendas in the room. There's my agenda and there's your agenda. And insofar as I'm answering you back, which one of these two agendas am I giving attention to?
You're just giving to what
my own agenda. Exactly. So in order for me to give attention to your agenda, what must I do with my agenda?
you have to listen.
In order to listen...
You have to don't have an agenda.
Well, in fact, I've got to almost put it aside.
Yeah.
You're absolutely
It's
correct.
not
Yeah. In other words, for me to listen to you, I have to be able to suspend my agenda for yours. So do you see, listening is a moral skill. Listening requires you to suspend your agenda for the agenda of the other in the situation that you're in. Now, let's assume I haven't learned that skill. So whenever you try and say something, I answer you back. I'm only listening to myself. I'm only attending to my agenda. Where does my agenda sit? In my subject or in my object? My subject. So therefore, you will experience me as subjective. You'll experience me as irrational. You'll experience me as emotional, as volatile, as impatient. All of those things become true, you see? Whereas if I can suspend my agenda for your agenda, because your agenda sits in my object, you experience me as objective, as reasonable, as non-judgmental, as open-minded, all of the things that we would consider to be consistent with maturity. So the first thing that's true for the difference between immature people and mature people is that immature people are fundamentally egocentric. They're mentally self-centered. They're selfish with how they deal with things. Whereas mature people have a generosity of spirit that enables them to suspend their agenda for the agenda of the other in the situation that they're in. The second thing that's true for immature people and mature people, you touched on yesterday, which is this whole thing of responsibility. You may remember that. We spoke about, we experience immature people as being irresponsible, mature people as being responsible. What that suggests is that the reason why we find immature people irresponsible is because they base their engagement with others on their own needs. Whereas mature people base their engagement with the other on the basis of the value that's operative in the situation that they're in. In other words, every situation that you're in has a sense of what's fundamentally the right thing to do here. And that's what I mean by value. Right? I mean, like the old-fashioned word virtue. What's the virtue that's operative in the situation? So, like honesty is a virtue like that. Now, in your view, what does it mean to be honest? Truthful. Any definition of honesty that would not refer to truthfulness would not make sense. Now, let's assume you ask me, where do I live? And I tell you truthfully, I live in South Africa. Do you know I'm an honest person? What, have you got something against South Africans? What's the matter? No, that's true. But let's assume I'm speaking the truth and you can verify that I'm speaking the truth about where I come from. So you go back, you see, he's verifiably, somebody holds me and you take my wallet out. You see, there's his passport, he's a South African. You can verify that I've been truthful in this instance. Do you therefore know that I'm honest? So what is there about me being truthful about being a South African that doesn't necessarily demonstrate my honesty?
Depends on the situation, but you've kind of got nothing to lose from that.
Between the eyes, Richard. Exactly that. I've got, there's no harm to me to speak the truth about being South African or not. But if you ask me about something that could potentially harm my own interests, and I still speak the truth, have you now demonstrated something about my honesty? So you only demonstrate that I'm an honest person when I stay honest when it is not in my interest to do so. That's why we experience mature people as responsible and immature people as irresponsible. Immature people deal with a situation on the basis of their own needs. They do what's expedient. They do what's going to work for them. They don't do what's right. They're basically cowardly with regard to how they deal with things. Whereas mature people are fundamentally courageous how they deal with it. They do what is right, even if it's not going to work for them to do so. They are courageous. Now, what makes this important, you see, is that therefore we're arguing that being able to give isn't just this blanket idea of giving away all the family jewels, you know, because that would be just too convenient. The giving is not about giving stuff, and it's not about always being nice. Giving is about being appropriate. And this sense of appropriacy, in other words, giving is about acting on the basis of what the situation you're facing requires of you. And it's always in these two classes, either generosity or courage. You know, so giving isn't about being nice. Giving is about acting consistently with a generosity or the courage that's operative in the situation that you're in. Yes, ma'am.
Can you ask a question?
I would prefer if you let me run for a bit.
Oh, okay.
Because there's actually quite a lot. Is that all right for this evening, by the way? Because there's, to get a full picture across tonight, more so than last night, there's a lot of, actually quite a bit of content. So if I punctuated, so is it all right? That's very kind, thank you. So giving is not about being nice, it's about being appropriate. It's about acting consistently with either the generosity or the courage that's operative in the situation that you're in. Which has to mean that taking is about getting your logic wrong. It's about acting consistently, it's about acting, it's about getting, you know, inverting. This, let me, best way to describe this is by way of example. So, Jaffrey's at home, and there's a knock at the door.
Who's that?
You open the door. There's a child there, Jaffrey, of 8 years old. This kid hasn't eaten in a week. I mean, let's just change, so it's not London, right? It's South Africa, but this happens. You can see he's really hungry. His little cheeks are sunken, little eyes are sunken. And he says to you, he's very well mannered, like you. Uncle, I'm very hungry. I don't know when last I ate. Oh, it's so long ago. Can I just have one piece of bread? Please.
Sure. Have a whole lot.
A hungry child asks Jaffrey for food. What should he do? Give the child food. That's kind of clear. Eh? You're obviously the most athletic man in the room. I mean, I'm sure you work out. I can see that. Richard. and I know this about you. And for instance, and one of the reasons why you're so kind of buff is that you run, and every morning, in fact, you run, and there's a path you run through the local park. You see, every morning, 5 o'clock, and over time, you've kind of befriended this little old lady who sort of takes her constitutional at that time too. You know, with a handbag and a stick. Every morning you go past her. Hi, hi. Huh? Hi, hi. Every morning. This morning, it just so happens this morning, you come running up to the little old lady where you normally meet her, and as you come up to her, a thug leaps out of a bush and starts beating this little old lady for her handbag. And it's terrible. I mean, it's the most horrifying assault. He's just hitting, but he's not a big guy. He's kind of the same size. So, and she doesn't want to give him the handbag. So there's a brawl going on in front of you. What does giving mean in this instance? What should Richard do, for heaven's sake?
Yeah, intervene and help the lady.
But tell, beat the thug. Now, can you see? Now, if you just took a step back from this, but hold on. Both of these people were giving, but their behavior was literally contradictory. Because when Jaffrey was giving, he was almost kindness personified. He gave them a whole loaf, never mind a slice of bread. Whereas in your case, you were brutality personified. But you see, that's exactly the point. Giving is not about being nice, it's about being appropriate. Sometimes appropriate is pleasant, sometimes it's unpleasant. That requires generosity, this requires courage. Now, how do we get this wrong? If we say giving is about acting consistently with the generosity or the courage that's operative in the situation that you're in, it has to mean that taking is about flipping your logic. So, there's a knock at the door. Jaffrey opens the door. The child's saying, "Uncle, I'm very hungry. I don't know when last I ate." And Jaffrey smacks the child. Yo, we're shocked. "Jaffrey, why do you smack the child?" And he says to us, "No, man, I'm being courageous." You understand? That's not courage, that's selfishness. And Richard, wait for it, he's running down the road of the path in the park. The little old lady's being beaten by the thug. He runs over, grabs the bag out of the old crone's hands, and he gives it to the thug. And we said to him, "Richard, how do you compute this?" He says, "No, man, I'm being generous." Do you see what I'm trying to suggest? If the situation that you're in requires generosity, and you act in a so-called courageous way, you're not giving, you're taking, we call that selfishness. If the situation that you're in requires courage, and you act in a so-called generous way, you're not giving, you're taking, we call that cowardice. Which basically means to say, folks, that this thing about giving isn't simple. There's a natural complexity to it. You know, the root of the matter of being here to give is that it's not about being nice, it's about giving each situation its due. Giving is about giving each situation its due. And there are two attributes to this: generosity and courage. And these two, in a sense, they're kind of quite different, actually, because in the first instance, which one of those two, generosity or courage, which one of them asks the higher price? Courage, because you're putting yourself on the line. However, which one would you think would be the primary element? Generosity, because if you had to, if we think of generosity as like an accommodating spirit, a kind spirit, and courage is in a confrontational spirit, surely if you had to give, your basic position will be affirming, will be kind. So the primary element of the two is generosity, and the secondary element is courage. So this is just now kind of still milking what we did yesterday, putting a bit more structure to this. Right. Now, what we're going to be exploring today is the hidden part of the problem, because both courage and generosity are really concerned with what you do. Now, have you ever done something? I'm sure, well, let me rephrase this. I'm sure you've done something in your life which in hindsight you thought, well, that wasn't entirely appropriate. Or have you always got everything completely 100%, 1000% right? You lie. All of us have done things which in hindsight was wrong. So how come, if you got it wrong in hindsight, why didn't you get it right in foresight?
Selfish.
That's true.
Didn't see the consequences.
You didn't see the that's exactly. In other words, you didn't really see the situation as it was. You kind of you were sort of egocentric, but kind of self-absorbed. So you're a bit blind. You didn't. In other words, there's a corresponding skill. It's a perceptual skill, which enables you to give each situation its due, and we call that skill seeing things as they are. Now, seeing things as they are and giving each situation as due set each other up. Clearly you can't do what's appropriate if you've misappraised the situation, that's kind of clear. But also, when you act inappropriately, you're unlikely to go into the next situation being able to see it as it is because you have baggage. So, for me, the favorite one of this is the domestic dispute with the significant other, that person. So you have a flaming row with that person, and you've said all sorts of things that, the sea wouldn't wash off you. You go to work, you're so enraged, your colleague walks past you and greets you, and you ignore the colleague because you're still angry. And that person says, hey man, I greeted you, and you say, So, sorry, I had such a fight with my husband or my wife, And so what that's saying is that when you misbehave, you leave a piece of you trapped in a drama behind you, which means you're unavailable in the next situation. You cannot see it as it is. So just as seeing things as they are enable you to give each situation its due, so giving each situation its due enables you to see things as they are. It's one hand that washes the other. It's very important, though, that we understand the realm that these two skills, giving each situation its due and seeing each situation as it is, where it operates from. And in order to do this, folks, we need to go back to that little exercise we did yesterday. I think we should do it again because there's lots of new people in the room. So, do you mind standing up again? So distribute yourself in the room like as follows. The rules are, you need to be able to, your torso must be orientated directly towards me. Right, so you can look direct, square at me, you're looking at me square on, and you must be able to do this without injuring somebody else. Or yourself. Yeah. So stagger yourself in the room, so you can do this. Don't hit the camera, Jaffrey. Come stand here, Jaffrey. Stand here. Very good. Okay, now what I need you to do is take both your index fingers and point them directly at me like this. And move them back. Crook your fingers, move them back until your fingers are about to disappear from your peripheral vision. So get your fingers to stop at the limit of your peripheral. No, don't look at your fingers, look at me. But move your hands forward until you can just see them. So wiggle your fingers until you're looking straight ahead of you, and your hands are at the limit of your peripheral vision. Everybody got that point? so tickle that boundary at the limit of your peripheral vision. Don't look at your fingers, look at me. Keep your hands at that limit, tickling the boundary, going all the way up until your fingers meet at the top. Very good. Very good. Coming back down, we'll just do it once because it'll be easy enough for you to remember what it is. Tickle the boundary at the limit of your peripheral vision, going all the way down. Very good. Very good. Please take a seat. I'm going to make one last point and then you can ask the question, right? What you've just done is you've described the boundary at the limit of your peripheral vision. And as we argued yesterday, this is a very important place. In fact, it's the most important place of your entire life. We refer to this boundary as your window of perception for very obvious reasons, because everything that you can perceive gets presented to you inside that window, in a sense in front of you. Right? And you can refer to that world, which is inside the window of perception, presented in front of you over there, as the outward. It's the world over there. It's the seen, the perceived. Where are you as the perceiver with regard to this window? Behind. So this window is the dividing line between the perceiver and the perceived, the seer and the seen, the inward and the outward. All right. Now what we said is that giving each situation its due is about these two kind of complementary skills, generosity and courage. They're both concerned with what you do. You have to step into the world to be generous. You have to step into the world to be courageous. The question is, if we said, but that's based, that transaction with the outward is based on something else, something that happens behind your eyes. It's not an action, it's a perception. It's how you see things that happens in the inward. If we say that if giving each situation its due is predicated on seeing things as they are, there has to be an inner equivalent to generosity, and there has to be an inner equivalent to courage. We'll get to that in a minute. Ma'am.
Yeah, I was wondering regarding dichotomy between giving and getting. I think, I see what you mean by we need to be on the giving side. But sometimes, like we are limited by our subjectivity, right? We know our needs, but we don't know the needs of others. So we feel our emotions, we don't feel the emotions of other people. So that's why I think there is a sense of urgency for our needs, our feelings, because we experience them, we don't experience
Right.
So I don't
Right. No, that's true. So what we indicated yesterday is that growth is a process. And one way of describing a process is that it's an incremental change. And if we then go back to this distinction over here between getting and giving, it means an incremental change from this to this. And if you impose the idea of shade on increments, it's basically saying that as you move along this continuum, there's a change in the kind of the sort of the grayness of the shade. You know, I mean, if you took shade or grey and sort of separated into two discrete categories, then basically what happens as you mature is a change in the proportion of the mix of your intent. So as you're comparatively immature, like this, say left of the middle line, fundamentally immature, then more frequently than not, you'll deal with the situation from this point of view. As you mature, you learn how to suspend your own assumptions. It's a part of the maturation skill, so that more frequently than not, you look at the world from that point of view. And it is an incremental shift. And as we indicated yesterday, that incremental shift is driven by failure. So when you're particularly self-interested, the world resists you, that forces you to re-examine your intent, which creates like an incremental change. And that's what is like the engine of growth. And what we're doing, what I'd like to do today, is not looking at the sort of, not looking at the sort of the journey, if you like, but I'm trying to kind of examine the architecture of this dark wedge and the architecture of the light wedge. What actually goes on inside it? Because it's not as clear as it seems. It's not just about doing things right. It's about seeing things right. I mean, and that relates exactly to your question, because your subjectivity creates the conditions where you don't see things right. It takes patience to withhold, to get enough data to see the thing right. Right, so I would have done it here because, but I mean, there's a lot of content I want to go through, so we're not going to do the exercise. But it's a fun exercise. It's a blindfold falling exercise. So, so I'd like you to imagine, all right, so we have to do it by way of thought experiment. You are standing in the middle of the room, and everybody else in the room is standing around you. You're instructed, keep your knees locked, your arms folded across your chest, and you have a blindfold on. And we tell you, Richard, fall. And don't fall like this, fall straight. With the assumption that the people on the periphery are going to catch you. And we give everybody the chance to fall. So that's the thought. Can you just imagine that happening? Okay, it's happened now. Everybody's gone through the thought experiment. Very good. What do you think that exercise fundamentally would all be about? Trust. So there you're standing blindfold. How are you going to find out you can trust them? What do you need to do to find out you can trust them? In other words, fall, take a leap of faith. What does that require of you? Courage. So what's the inner equivalent of courage? Trust. Trust and courage set each other up. Like seeing things as they are and giving each situation its due set each other up. If I can't trust you, if I do not take a risk with you, I can never learn that I can trust you. It is precisely the fact that I have the courage to take a risk with you that I earn a little bit of trust. And earning that little bit of trust enables me to take a further courageous step. It's incremental, step by step. Please, Richard.
Trust in what?
Well, in this instance, trust in the others of the circle. So let's just start, because that's what we're trying to work out. Just what goes on the inside and what happens on the outside. How do these things pattern? So if I want to become more courageous, I need to start trusting the other. In this instance, the people around me, the social other. Yeah. Now, go back to the thought experiment. Go very quickly, just fall. Now you fall, right? Good. And you've discovered that they've not left you with your face on the floor. How do you feel towards them?
Thankful.
Grateful, thankful. It's true to say that the person who fell was generous with themselves. They give of themselves. When they give of themselves and they reflect on the consequences of that, they're grateful to the people who caught them. So the inner equivalent of generosity necessarily would be gratitude. Gratitude and generosity set each other up, just like trust and courage set each other up. I mean, let's just unpack generosity. If I give you something with the intent to make you feel obligated to reciprocate, would you call that generosity? So surely generosity has to be giving to give away. There's no giving without giving to away. You don't call is not generous. If I think you owe me A, B, and C, or if you think somebody owes you something, and that person gives you the thing that you think they owe you, do you feel you owe them a debt of gratitude? So in other words, gratitude means I recognize I've received in excess of my due. If it's my due, I don't owe you a debt of gratitude. It's precisely the understanding that I've received in excess of my due that makes it possible for me to give away. So my gratitude enables my generosity. And just like my gratitude enables my generosity enables my gratitude. Because let's assume I am one of those people who are always of the opinion that the reason why I give you anything at all is I'm trying to develop sort of a sense of obligation that I can then demand later. And if that's my habit, if somebody gives something to me, what am I going to assume about that person's giving? If the only reason I give things to other people is to develop a sense of obligation so I can get something out of them tomorrow, if that's how I give, and somebody gives something to me, what am I going to assume about why they've given? They want something back. In other words, I don't owe them a debt of gratitude because this is a transaction. Do you understand? My generosity, my lack of generosity disables my gratitude. If you can only receive once you learn the skill of giving to give away. If you haven't learned the skill of giving to give away, it doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter what the intent of the other is. Your receiving turns into taking. The milk curdles. So, this suggests that there's a kind of like there's a corresponding thing that happens on the inside, behind the window of perception, in the inward, that parallels generosity and courage. Just like seeing things as they are enables giving each situation its due, so your gratitude enables your generosity, and your generosity enables your gratitude, so your trust enables your courage enables your trust. They're mutually enabling things. Now that has an implication. And the first implication is if we say giving each situation its due is about acting generously and courageously, what we have to understand about this secondary element and this primary element is that they have a different orientation with regard to time. When I'm being grateful, where am I looking? Past or future? Past. Thank you for what you have done. When I'm being trusting, where am I looking? Future. I'm not running away as they come over the hill. So, and courage is also about looking forward. As is generosity, when you're being generous, you're giving away what you have accumulated. In other words, gratitude and generosity are concerned with appropriacy in dealing with the past, and trust and courage are concerned with appropriacy in terms of dealing with the future. And if we say that giving each situation its due means acting with generosity and courage, it has to mean that if you don't look at your past, sincerely look at your past, with a deep sense of gratitude, and you don't look at the future with a fundamental sense of trust, you are doing violence to the truth you cannot be trusted with your own life. And it's suggesting that out of all of the things we've spoken about, all of the categories we've spoken about, there's one that stands head above shoulders all the others that actually makes the whole magic happen. There's one thing that if you don't get that right, you'll get nothing else right. And which would you guess that is? Of all of these categories, what's the most important one? The most important lever. If you want to pull anything, you've got to pull that lever. Gratitude. Because if I'm resentful, if I think I've been done in, then I'm not going to give away, because I think you owe me. So I'm not going to give you anything at all other than a kick in the teeth. If I'm convinced that I've been done in the past, when I look forward, I'm not going to trust anything, I'm not going to be able to be grateful. So folks, the core, yesterday we spoke about intent and the fundamental architecture of intent to be about giving, the distinction between giving and taking, and that's true, but this distinction between giving and taking is rooted in a perceptual skill. And the perceptual skill is learning how to win gratitude from resentment. Because if we say that if you saw things as they are, it means that when you look at your past, you will be grateful. And if you aren't grateful when you're looking at your past, you're distorting, you're not seeing it as it is. And no matter how legitimate you think your resentment is. And if you look at the future and you're not looking at the future with trust, you're also doing violence to the truth. So let's kind of explore why that should be true, because that's clearly, I mean, in our age of victims, this is an extremely contentious thing to be saying, right? That nobody on the planet has a legitimate cause to review themselves as a victim. Any person who's not dealing with no matter how ill-treated they think they've been, any person who doesn't deal with their life fundamentally on the basis of gratitude is doing violence to the truth. They're not seeing things as they are. Let's understand why that's the case, shall we? The first thing that's true for these categories is these categories don't just actually pattern your own inwardness and outwardness. They actually help to account for how you pattern the world around you. You remember we spoke about harmony and conflict yesterday. So I've upset Mahmoud, so he's not here. So I'm going to pick on Richard. I really want your watch, Richard. Very good. That's what I wanted to do. If I want Richard's watch, in other words, I'm dealing with him on the basis of what I'm trying to get from him. Eh? I want Richard's watch. Who can withhold the watch? So who's got power? He's got power over me. So if you're dealing with the other on the basis of what you want from the other's ability to withhold what you want makes them strong and you weak, right? You become a victim. Not only do I become vulnerable to you, though, but if you assume that I was actually serious and I wanted to get your watch, I mean, your intuitive reaction would be this. In other words, you would experience me as dangerous to you. So while I want the watch from you, your ability to withhold the watch makes you dangerous to me, and I simultaneously become dangerous to you. We become dangerous to each other, you know? And if people are dangerous to each other, you have conflict. If I shift my engagement with you from what I'm trying to get from you to how I can be helpful, you can't withhold the watch. So you can't manipulate me anymore. So I'm safe from you. You can't harm. But not only am I safe from you, but precisely because I'm trying to be helpful to you, you're safe from me. And if we're safe from each other, we have harmony. Which means to say that if you engage the world around you, the people around you, from this point of view, you set up a pattern of relationships that are steeped in conflict. Whereas if you engage the world on the basis of what sits here, you set up the world around you in relationships of harmony. These categories help us to understand how that actually happens. So I'd like you to imagine, so just pan out a little bit. So the moment, the emphasis, up to now, the emphasis has been the blindfolded one in the middle. I'd like you to introduce the experience of the people standing in the periphery as part of our thought experiment. All right. And we're going to view the person blindfolded in the middle as almost like a reasonably clean expression of inwardness, because the person's eyes are disabled, so they're really thrown in on themselves. Whereas the people in the periphery, they're kind of trying to look after this person who's about to fall, so they're kind of all out there. I don't know that I can trust you. You blindfolded me. You said before, and I fall. If you think about the people, the person in the middle and the people on the periphery, who fundamentally takes responsibility for the exercise succeeding or failing? The person in the middle or the people on the periphery? People on the periphery. What does it take of you to take responsibility? Well, it's courage. You say, I'm big, I'm man for it, or woman for it, whatever. I can take it. You bring it to me, So it's precisely the courage of the people on the periphery that enables the trust of the person in the middle. And complementarily, it's the trust of the person in the middle that enables the courage of the people on the periphery, because you have to fall for them to catch you. So your trust enables their courage, just like their courage enables your trust. When you start working with these patterns, it's not just your own inwardness and outwardness that comes right. You actually start patterning the social other in the same way. Similarly, it is true to say that if you didn't get injured in the exercise, they were generous with you. And therefore, you're grateful towards them. There's two antonyms to gratitude from this point of view. The one is resentment, and the second is entitlement. I don't have to be great, you owe me. So let's go back to our thought experiment. I walk into the center, and I exude this sense of entitlement. You better not drop me, hey? What are you likely to do? So do you understand? Hey? Your sense of entitlement creates the condition where the other withholds from you, right? So the resentment and the ingratitude of the self disables the generosity of the other. I mean, folks, you would have heard this line of text out of your own mouth 1,000 times in your adult life. I'll never give that bastard anything again in my entire life. He's completely ungrateful. When you experience somebody as ungrateful, it disables your gratitude, your generosity. So the ingratitude of the self disables the generosity of the other. There's a pattern that both affects our inwardness and our outwardness that creates this dance that we have with the social world around us, that creates the patterning of the social other. There's an implication of this which is politically extremely contentious. If you think about the attribute of all of this, so let's go back to our blindfold falling exercise. So what we've now is explored, this blindfold falling exercise doesn't just tell you how your own inwardness and outwardness work. They actually show you how you construct either virtuous or destructive circles around you, people around you. Who has the explicit power in our blindfold falling exercise? The person in the middle or the people on the periphery? People on the outside. Because they're the ones who say, come, we're the big ones, we'll take care of you. What does the person in the middle have to do? So in other words, folks, power is really an attribute of outwardness. The self cannot own power. What does the person in the middle have to do for the magic to happen? Well, they've got to submit. They've got to trust, true. They've got to fall. They've got to give in. It is the submission of the self that creates the possibility for all of this to happen. The rebelliousness of the self disables it. No, I'm not going to trust them. No, I'm going to resist them. So what we have to understand, folks, fundamentally, is that our need to get control over outcomes, our need to be in charge, produces exactly the opposite of what we want. So, I mean, in my corporate work, I've got a very interesting little example that kind of helps us to explore the distinction. So, I want you to assume that I'm the boss. It's just play plates for here. And I've got two people working for me. Yasser, we need another board here. I've got Yasser's working for me, and I've got Alicia working for me. And I'm very experienced in a job that both of them have to do because I did that job in 1980. I'm old enough. Don't laugh at me. You shouldn't laugh at old people. It's not nice. In 1980, Yasser, I did what you have to do now, and what I did worked. Shut up and go and do what I did. Alicia, in 1980, I did what you have to do now, and what I did worked. It may be helpful to take a look at it. Now, if you were Yasser, how would you feel about what's just happened here? Sorry? Say it again. What? Is that what you said? What? Yeah, yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. If you were Alicia, how would you feel about it? In 1980, I did what you have to do. It may be helpful to you to take a look at it. How would you feel about it? Much better. Sure. Now, what's the difference between these two interactions? That's the first thing, it's an immediately obvious thing. She has a choice that he doesn't have. But the problem is, because that so nicely resonates with our sense of political correctness, we're not invited to take a further step. Because there's a lot more going on in the interaction, in the shift in these two interactions than just, if you like, how autocratic or democratic my behavior is. In order to understand the difference, you've got to go under the skin. You've got to separate two variables in your mind. Means and ends. And you have to put into those two categories either the person who's doing the job or the job that's being done. So if I said to you, in 1980, I did what you have to do, what I did worked, don't argue with me, shut up and go and do what I did. Of these two things, what is my end? I'm trying to get the job done, and therefore I'm using Yasser, the person, to get the job done. If I said to you, in 1980, I did what you have to do, it might be helpful to you to take a look at it. If I'm sincere, could we have a different outcome from what we had in 1980? Could it be a disaster? Entirely possible. So in the Alicia interaction, what is my end of these two things? Well, it's not to get the job done, because the job could be a disaster. I'm trying to teach the person something. My end is the person. And what enables me to give her something is the job that she's doing. So can you see, it's a bit more subtle than just whether I'm being, who's making the choice. In your case, I'm using you as my means to get a job done. In your case, I'm using the job as an opportunity to teach you something. It's that inversion of means and ends, folks, that helps you to see that there's been a shift in the intent of the engagement. You always interrogate the issue of intent by asking yourself, who's the beneficiary? Who do you think Yasser would experience as the beneficiary of this interaction? So from Yasser's point of view, I'm trying to take something from him. Who would Alicia experience as the beneficiary? Herself. I'm giving her something. Now, we're taking this back to work, and we're trying to distinguish the boss that a person would work for because they have to, or the boss that they're going to work for because they want to. Of the two, who's going to work for me because they have to? And she'll work for me because she wants to. Who's got real power? The boss that you'll work for because you have to, or the boss that you'll work for because you want to? Want to. Why does that person have real power? I beg your pardon? Okay, say a bit more. Yeah, exactly. Well, you're loyal to the person. Yeah, exactly. You're on the person's side. So do you understand? It's in this. I don't have the power. She gives it to me. Do you understand? The self cannot own power. Huh? In fact, if this is about, if we say, you know, who's likely to work for me because they really want to, it's Alicia. Huh? That's where I've got power. But interestingly, in which one of these two am I trying to control the outcome? But do you understand? Control and power are opposites. The desire to produce an outcome, to gain control over an outcome, is not an expression of your power. It's an expression of your weakness. You don't own power. The others own your power. The self, the inward, the looker, this frightened little thing that's sitting behind the window of perception looking out, that thing can never be powerful. It's not made to be powerful. It's made to submit. Power is an attribute of other. It is not an attribute of self. It is the desire of the self To become powerful and to take power perverts the milk curdles. It perverts into control. And in fact, it becomes not an expression of your power, it becomes an expression of your weakness. Because why do you control the other? Precisely because they're threatening. So, if you saw things as they are, you would be deeply grateful towards other people. You would trust the world and you would submit. You wouldn't make such a big noise. You wouldn't be producing the self that we think is such a politically correct self today that always has an issue and is burning, a pair of underpants for a flag or something. It's inappropriate. It's a perversion of the healthy being. Now, people might say, but you cannot say that. Because what about the poor children who get their bottoms pinched by greasy old men and all these awful things that happen in the world? Surely, you cannot trust the social other because the social other is perverse. Nasty things happen to good people. Well, that's true. But the problem is that far more good things happen from people than nasty things happen from people, otherwise you could not be alive. I mean, in a sense, what I'm saying to you is that if you didn't recognize that the other has given you inestimably more of than your due, you're not seeing things as they are. So, for me, my favorite one of this is the history of the shirt. We take in this climate, by the way, if you don't put clothing on you, you die. Do you know how cold it is here? I mean, you call this summer, you're insane. I mean, look at me. Huh? I'm crazy. So I'm very glad for the shirt. In fact, I'm very glad for woven. Have you ever considered the history of the shirt? This is a very interesting history. It's not just from yesterday. It's got like 10,000 years behind it, this shirt. No, really. I mean, 10,000 years ago, some very clever people discovered that if you took plant fiber, you could spin it into yarn. And then they used the yarn for catching fish or whatever. And then some other old lady sat at a fireside maybe 8,000 years ago and said, but look at this, folks. If you took this yarn and you did this with it, you can turn that into fabric. Isn't that amazing? 300 years ago, some very clever engineers, English engineers, by the way, we like to beat them up, but they're actually very good people. English engineers discovered the fine metallurgy to produce these huge looms that created the conditions that every one of us today wear woven fabric garments. How many people today still wear skins because they have to wear skins? I mean, there's probably 2. Huh? Do you pay a single penny royalty to this collaborative effort of hundreds and thousands, probably thousands of people for 10,000 years that have put the shirt on your back? And that's just the shirt on your back. Hey? I mean, what about the language you speak? So my own kind of confession, since we are confessing, now let me confess. I grew up in South Africa I was a small child in the 60s, so this is the height of apartheid. And we went to, and you might not realize that it wasn't just blacks who were evil that we were taught. English were like evil squared. We were taught stories of the concentration camps and about the women and children. The English killed 25,000 Boer women and children at the turn of the century, the turn of the 20th century. So we were kind of like, we had this stuff pumped into us, hatred of the English, And then I married one. Well, it didn't last, it lasted 35 years, but at some point it caved. It couldn't stand the ongoing skirmish of the Boer War that actually hadn't ended in our marriage, So I had, and folks, we all have prejudices. I had this prejudice about the English. I was brought up with this. I was skeptical of the English. I was cynical, the whole English thing. And I got an opportunity to teach the leadership work that I do, this care and growth leadership model, at Cambridge. This is probably about 15 years ago, in Cambridge Manufacturing Leaders Program. So the very first day, I'm standing in this training room. It's a beautiful training room. It's like this circle, this round training room in Wolfson's College. I mean, grand, unbelievable. I'm waiting for these people to arrive for me to teach. And this thought occurs to me. I thought, they're entrusting me with their children. That was the first thought. The second thought is, you shameless bastard. How can you think like that? And I suddenly realized, I've been carrying this prejudice about these people my entire life, from when I can remember, because the stuff had been pumped in since, before I was, before school. I cannot do what I do professionally in Afrikaans, my mother tongue. It doesn't have the vocabulary. I mean, and if you consider who's all participated in giving us this language, or giving me this language, you'll probably know better than I do. I mean, the Scandinavians had a hand in this, the French had a hand in this, the Romans had a hand in this, the Greeks had a hand in this. This incredible machine, this is the unbelievable tool to make sense out of the world that has been the product of human collaboration over millennia. I don't have to pay any, and this is not like Bill Gates, huh? I don't have to pay any one of these people a farthing in gratitude or in royalty for giving me this tool whereby I make sense out of my world today. Who the hell am I to look at these people with resentment? Do you understand? I mean, anything, if you stood back far enough from any category of people that you think you carry legitimate resentment towards, you would see you owe them more. They've given you more blessing than curse.
What about perpetrators? Murderers, people carry heavy burdens in their life because
No, that's true.
somebody has been incredibly evil.
That's true.
Do they show gratitude to
Well, you don't, not necessarily to the person, but so what I'm saying is that if we've got two engagements with other. The first one is with the social other people. There might be individuals that you need to take out, but you cannot dismiss the social other on that basis. It's the exception, it's never the rule. If it was the rule, you would not be alive. Huh? I mean, if we say one of the attributes of courage is the propensity to take care of, like the people on the periphery, catch you. Our human condition is made in such a way that without others doing the equivalent of that, we couldn't survive a month. We would die. It's true. There's this African proverb: it takes a village to make a person, to enable a person. I mean, it is precisely because the elders stood between you and that vast alien wilderness out there, said, he's ours. You cannot harm him, that you're still alive today. You're alive because of what's been given to you by others, and you're alive because what's being withheld from you by others. And you're only alive for that reason. If those two variables were, and there might be that one or two of them are rotten, that's true, but you may not dismiss the whole thing on that basis.
I suppose you could show gratitude to the situation.
That's right.
Large,
That's right.
and maybe that would help.
Well, in fact, that kind of introduces then the next step, because the other way of looking at this is like to say, look, I've actually got two engagements with the other. The one is with the social other people, and the second is with we would refer to this as the totality of the other. I mean, if you think about our blindfold falling exercise, the person in the middle, if they took their blindfold off, immediately they'd be confronted by the people around them. But if you looked up, that'll be everything that fills the window of perception for you, the totality of the other. These categories are as true for your relationship with the social other as they are, in fact, more so for your relationship with the totality of the other. These categories actually help you to understand the essence of your engagement with life. So if we say, if we go back to who you're not the actor. You're stuck on this side of the window of perception. You're the looker. And let's understand what looking uniquely enables you to do. Let's put you in a position where you can really see things as they are. So we transport you by helicopter to a very high mountain in a desert scene. So there's no cloud, and it's just the vast emptiness. So you get a sense of how things are. You see things, we say when you get perspective, it's normally about going up somewhere. We go to a retreat in the mountains. If you sit on a very high mountain and you look at the vista around you, how do you feel? Say a bit more? Insignificant?
I think you can see it all. Things like that.
And if one, that's true. Give me some more synonyms. Small, insignificant, that's all true. I can see it all, that's all true. So humbled, that's also true. Involved, also true. This sense of being small and insignificant, is it terrifying? Is it a bad experience?
Yes and no.
Well, in what way is it not a bad experience? Let's start there.
You marvel at.
You marvel at it. In other words, when you put yourself in a position to really get a sense of who you really are, which is a very small thing in the face of all of that, which is really vast, the first logical response is marvel. It is awe. It is amazement. In other words, when the self sees things as they are, you strip everything else away. We kind of go from the noise that we're in and the walls that we're in. We allow ourselves the opportunity to be in a viewing place. We're basically in a state of awe. That's what happens on this side of the window of perception. What are you seeing on the other side that produces that experience?
Insignificance.
No, I'm insignificant, so that is significant. So folks, the further implication of this is significance. Just like the self cannot own power, the self, the looker, this frightened little thing that's sitting behind your eyes, cannot own significance. Significance is an attribute of other. The easiest way to understand it is to think how attention works, because that which is significant is that which is worthy of attention. What part of your body symbolizes attention? How do you know somebody's giving you attention? They're looking at you. Where are your eyes designed to look? Well, I mean, straight, not so. I mean, it's not, do you understand? You've not been made to find yourself interesting. You've not been made to be fascinated with yourself or enamored with yourself. The mere fact that you can only get a view of yourself by a mirror says it's artificial, it's by way of artifact. You've been made to be fascinated with other than yourself. You've been made to be enamored with other than yourself, in love with other than yourself. To take this, to pursue the sense of significance for the self is deeply perverse. It's deeply ugly. There's nothing more objectionable in a human being than narcissism. Somebody who finds themselves fundamentally interesting. It's like a zombie movie. It's like your eyes rolling back in the back of your head. You've been made to be in awe with that. Now, what makes it possible? So because what is interesting, you indicate that there's two possible reactions to that which is vast. The one is marvel, awe, and the other one would be?
Fear.
Terror. I mean, not just fear. Because what's the logical implication of that which is very small, apprehending that which is vast and overwhelming, is the terror of being overwhelmed. There's only two ways of being human. Do you understand? There's a way of awe and a way of terror. There isn't a third. What is, of all of this that we have here, what's the thing that we need? What's the lever that you can pull that shifts the terror into awe? Gratitude. Does it make sense? Because you see, what am I assuming when I'm grateful towards all of that, not just other people? And by the way, I then see other people as a subset of the totality of the other. What do you say? Wherever you turn is the face of Allah. So the totality of the other is His face. It's Him. You're talking to Him. If I saw things as they are, I would recognize that I've been given, incalculably in excess of my due by other than me. I don't produce the scaffolding that the light of my attention sits on. Is not my own product. It's taken all events since the Big Bang, since the beginning of time, to be woven together to produce this very rickety tower. I mean, it is rickety now. It's 60 years old, for heaven's sake. You know, that houses the light of my consciousness. Miraculously. You know. In fact, not only have I been bequeathed this by other than me, this is maintained, it's sustained by other than me. You know, I mean, what did we have for lunch? No, with supper, we had supper, we had fish. Am I right? We had herring, salmon. Salmon, we had salmon, that's right. We had salmon and potatoes. Okay. And that salmon is now coursing through me. I mean, necessarily so, because it's producing the energy for me to be able to talk to you. So if you say, if you look at me, who am me? Well, actually, I'm a collage. Inside me, there's a dead fish. And that dead fish was a living fish. And that living fish ate some, I don't know, these things are all farmed these days. So it ate some pellets that some Norwegian threw into like a net, you know. And those pellets came from a lucerne field somewhere in Uzbekistan or some. Do you understand? So inside me, there's a lucerne field, there's Uzbekistan, there's sunlight, because that's what takes photos of. In fact, I'm empty of my own nature. I don't exist by myself. I exist from other than myself. I'm a collage of things that have been woven together that is so complex, I cannot even account for the fact that I'm alive, you know. You don't exist by yourself, and you don't exist for yourself. You exist by other than you, for other than you. If you then recognize, and why, by the way, has this collage been brought together? By all of that isn't you, so that you can look out at all of that. Well, it's so that you can have this uniquely human experience called all. That's why you've been made as a viewing platform for that which is incredibly small to view that which is overwhelming and affirm. It is extraordinary. It is amazing. And what makes it possible for you to make that affirmation is that you recognize that that thing is my benefactor. It is not my enemy. It is not only my benefactor, it is my ally. You know, we're alive on the sea of two mercies. The first mercy of that which is bequeathed. We say Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Eh? The first mercy is that which is given, that which is bequeathed. Like this collage of dead fish and things that makes it possible for me to slap my legs, my lip. This is fascinating. You know? That's the one thing. But not only that, what is the logical implication when that which is very small, in fact, infinitesimally puny, confronts that which is overwhelming? What's your prognosis, doctor? What's going to happen? Well, you'll be overwhelmed. So why aren't you? Because the weight of that is withheld from you. It is inconceivable that you, as such a small thing, can continue being alive in a universe where there's literally an incalculable number of variables that can kill you. How many things could kill you right now? I mean, it's like, why are you still alive? Because the catastrophe is withheld. This vastness that you look at is not blind. This vastness is not arbitrary. There's an extraordinary genius that sits behind it, that has produced the possibility for you to be here, that has granted you, that has withheld the catastrophe of you for one reason only, so that you can be in love with it, so that you can be amazed with it, in awe with it. That's being human. What makes it possible for you to claim that station of gratitude, of awe? That's the output of the human experience. The benign, the kind of the normative, the healthy output of the human experience. The input is gratitude. Learn how to transmute your resentment into gratitude. Because when you do that, then only do you become fully human. Then only do you do with this carcass what this carcass has been designed to do. Now, we have techniques of doing that, but it's already 8:30, so I've bent your ears enough. There are techniques of doing that, and if you want to, you're very welcome to email me, or you can read the text. But this is why this issue of gratitude is the central problem. You crack the issue of the problem of gratitude, you crack the problem of being alive. You fail at the problem of gratitude, you will fail at the project of having been human. There's no question in my mind about that. There's no such thing as morality without gratitude. A human being who roots their behavior on resentment is fundamentally untrustworthy. They're fundamentally unjust. They cannot be trusted with others. They cannot be trusted with themselves. They are fundamentally dangerous. They will destroy themselves and the people around them. And the biggest tragedy is not that they destroy the people around them. The biggest tragedy is that from the beginning of time, from the Big Bang, from the first event, there's been this incredibly laborious fine-tuning of events. You know, I mean, for heaven's sake, that energy had to kind of chill into matter, which is like really quite a significant thing. And then the matter had to be gathered together into solar systems. And then this very strange solar system right on the outer limb of our galaxy had to kind of produce this little blue marble that had water in it and, you know, this viscous stuff that enabled us to do kind of viscous things and procreate. And, you know what I mean? It's gonna, all of that had to happen for you to be here. Talk about an investment. Huh? And then you can turn around. This is the most extraordinary thing about us human beings. You can turn around and say, you know what? This is all arbitrary. This is all nonsense. Existence, life, Allah has taken a risk with you that is incalculable and unpayable. And He's had to take a risk with you. He's had to take a risk with you because without the possibility of free will, you cannot have all. All requires free will because if that which is overwhelming doesn't give you the choice to either being in terror or be in awe, demands the awe, then clearly you're not responding out of awe, you're responding out of terror. Do you understand? It's like the same kind of craziness if you said, you must love me. Really, really. You know, I mean, do you understand? It requires free will for this phenomenon to happen. I wouldn't ever said that because I know it's corpulent, not very pretty anymore. I mean, it requires free will for the human being to have awe. I mean, and that's why the angels got riotous about this matter. Are you crazy? You're creating this creature who's going to bring mischief. But without the possibility of the mischief, you can be. It's necessary. Choose to be in awe. Do the work of transmuting your resentment into gratitude from the smallest to the biggest events. And the more legitimate you think your resentment is, the more dangerous it is to you. Yes, ma'am.
In practicality, can you have both resentment and then gratitude, so you can actually be gratitude in that you've experienced it secondhand, not firsthand, and that you can kind of pave the way for progress or betterment?
Yes, you can. Well, it's like, so I'm going to try and give you a very quick rule of thumb for technique to do this, because that's what you're asking. How can I make this useful? How can I, folks, all of this is about what you make significant in your life. And what you make significant in your life is based on, we call it waswas. So it's the internal whisperings, the internal dialogue. Your internal dialogue has fundamentally got two registers. It's got a register that's rooted in gratitude. And when you describe the world from that register, you will see, I mean, you can write the text down, by the way. You will see that the description that you write down will carry an affirmation of the courage of others, a willingness to submit, a sense of awe. The text will carry it. It'll be the register. You understand what I mean by register, by the way? It's like the tone of the text will be consistent with this. If it's the opposite, if you're resentful, and we said the opposite of resentment is selfishness. Eh? Your resentment will create selfishness. You won't have seeing things as they are, you'll have presumption. You won't have giving each situation its due, you'll have expediency. You won't have trust, you'll have distrust. You won't have courage, you'll have cowardice. You won't have submission, you'll have rebellion. You won't have power, you'll have control. What do we mean by control? A desire to produce predictable outcomes. You won't have awe, you'll have terror. You won't have significance, you'll have trivializing. Isn't it interesting that our current kind of politically correct way of being clever is about trivializing? No, but I mean, that's just merely Darwinian accidents. It's just trivializing. So, start a journal. When you journal, try and do, I mean, even if it's 50 words, 100 words max, but write an honest appraisal of your day on the page. Then go away, have a cup of tea, kick the cat, and slap the child. You wouldn't do that. I know you wouldn't do that. Never mind. I mean, I would. Then come back and reread the text. And then ask yourself, what's coming out of this text? Are the categories kind of resonant with the red, or are they resonant with the black? If they're resonant with the red, rewrite the description. Literally rewrite the description to be resonant with the black. And you will find, once you've described the thing to yourself, in this, sometimes it takes a few iterations, you feel better about the event. To the point where thank God it happened. I've learned something. There's been a change. There's been a transformation. Then act. And until you do that, don't act, because you'll be in a non-virtuous cycle. The only way to get out of a non-virtuous cycle is to reframe. And folks, really, you might say, but some things are just fundamentally like appalling. Nothing exists independently of your designation of it. You are immensely free. You decide whether the foot you've just lost was a blessing or a curse. It's your decision. There's nothing inherent about a lost foot which is either a blessing or a curse. If you're courageous enough to take the responsibility for being human and doing that recalibration, I guarantee you, you'll have a life of ecstatic delight, because that's your birthright. A life that would be the continuous experience of a person on a very high mountain in a desert scene in the dead of night with this immense velvety silence and myriads of stars. Because that's how it is. You've been made to be in awe. Your life is designed for awe, including the apparent harm of it. It's all part of the weaving together to make your unique viewing platform. All of us have got a unique place that we look at the world out from. Alhamdulillah, thank you very much. You've been very patient with me.